Laying Egg by Cáel Louw. Chapter 13. Cáel knew he was going to be in trouble when he got back. If he got back. He'd be in trouble even if he didn't. Damien was going to be pissed off that he'd taken a jet without a planned mission. The man could just imagine the soldiers stomping around and cursing about conserving SIBA cells and blah blah blah. He thought about how that would be nothing compared to how angry he would be when he found his brother. Someone had probably already told the former military man that the scary one had been seen in the field, carrying the small tech to his tent. Even now, Cáel's mind was struggling to believe what he'd done. Beat one of his oldest friends within an inch of his life. Dylan said dumb stuff all the time, and sure, Cáel had threatened him before, but he had never... Not without... God damn it. Dylan was one of the few people who treated him like a normal person, who didn't tiptoe around him because he was different and he'd... It was her fault. It was all that little... He would never have been so angry if she hadn't made him like that. Cáel growled as his blood boiled at just the thought of the girl. He should have let her die that day. Maybe when he got back he could let a nymph slip through into the lab while she was working. He was sure he could make it look like an accident. She was the one who'd ticked him off. He hadn't been mad at Dylan. He'd been furious at her. She'd barely settled into the city, and already she acted like she ran the place. Ungrateful little snake. It was all her fault. At least it would be a while before anyone came looking for him, if they even did. He didn't think anyone had seen him transporting the body-shaped pile of blankets into his tent. Now that he thought about it, I need to kill something, Cáel hissed to himself. It wouldn't fix the mess he'd made, but it would sure as hell make him feel better. He scanned the area below for something. Anything that moved would be fine. One thing they were never short on was game. The Memphs didn't seem to like animals, and for the most part left them alone. Something dangerous would be nice, though. So the tiny voice in his head would shut up about this being inevitable and that he was the real problem. "Hello, prey," he said aloud. Below, a small group of Memphs were lounging on the front lawns of what used to be a suburban house. The pool had gone green, and the overgrown bushes had tangled a wall of blue fruit and thick leaves around the monsters. Their own private watering hole, away from the overgrown golf course that spread out along the plain. They looked up at him as he flew over, and hissed at him for casting his shadow over their sun. Perfect. The engines had barely died down before the first one was on the small craft, and he slashed its chest open. He pushed himself to stand in the cockpit, and another lunged as the first fell screaming into the overgrown grass. He had managed to land close enough to the wall that he could jump atop it from the wing of his jet, and claws shredded the once pretty foliage on the poolside. The two that had got to him were normal, but there were three still down there that were certainly not what he was looking for. As undersized as they were, they made for easy targets, probably sick or weak that a large group had left behind. The scout ran along the wall and hopped down onto the bride as two chased him. He punched the first one to jump at him, full on in the jaw, and teeth came loose as it fell aside. The second was clearly just an idiot, before it had been turned, because it crouched like a cat, wriggled its butt, and practically jumped onto his bracer. It was dead before Cáel fully pushed it off his blade, with an unimpressed sneer. The first had managed to right itself with some struggle, and lumbered back on unsteady feet, to swipe at the human. Its claws caught Cáel's arm, but it only served to make him fight harder. The pain was good. It was a type of hurt he could deal with, rather than the rolling turmoil and self-disgust that had haunted him since that moment Dylan's eyes had started to glaze over. The creature growled at him and jumped back when he swiped at it with his bracer. It crouched for another attack. He hissed back to antagonize it. It hurled its bulk at him and actually managed to twist its body around his blade to slam into the scout. The force of it sent them both rolling across the grass. Cáel felt a tile beneath his shoulder and used their momentum to push their tangle of limbs over once more to land the Memph's head over the lip of the pool and force its face beneath the green water. It flailed, and its screams bubbled up under its neck, but it couldn't reach him in the position he'd had it locked in. Movements at the corner of his peripheral had his head snapping up to see the last one sprint away into the house surrounded in thorns. "Oh, hell no!" he barked, before struggling with the one in his grip when it managed to rear up. It had used his lapse in concentration to wriggle its head out from under the hand holding it down. Cáel hit his bracer against his leg to retract the blade, before planting his fist in the back of the scrawny thing's neck. It broke between the sharp tile lip and the pressure, and the creature's head dropped to float in the murky water a moment later. Cáel didn't bother fishing it out for teeth. The moment it was decapitated, he took off after the one who had run. "The one bloody day I go looking for a fight and I find the only stinking nymph in existence who runs away," he hissed to himself as he hit the patio. What once had been a rather nice set of outdoor couches had molded over and been knocked aside by the cowardly monster. This is some bullshit. He slowed as he reached the sliding door, and the main panel had been broken and propped up against the built-in pizza oven, and the other had mismatched stickers of butterflies and sailboats about hip level all the way along. He took a breath to calm the wool of his bracer, before he carefully stepped over the threshold and listened for movement inside. He heard the panic scraping of claws on tile and frantic scratching on metal. Cáel managed a genuine grin as he sauntered further into the once opulent home. It felt good to be feared by the most feared thing on the planet. When he found it, the nymph was scratching at an ornate gate that must have led to a wine cellar. Fancy places like this were known to have them from time to time. The farmhouse came to mind. Obviously, these things had a thing for the dark. Oh, it would suit the scout down to the ground if another big boy was hiding down there. "Hey!" Cáel shouted at it, and the thing instantly looked up at him with terrified eyes and backed away down a short corridor, cowering back into what had once been a dining room. "Don't run away from me," Cáel taunted it as he rounded the corner after it. "You have no idea how badly I need this today. Please don't kill me," it begged, backing under the table pathetically. Cáel froze. He could feel his eyes grow wide and his jaw drop open. Did the nymph just speak to him? No, it couldn't have. That wasn't possible. Nymphs didn't talk. They were animals, genetically changed on such a base level that anything past a... Aisha had said that a common house cat had a wider vocal spectrum. These thoughts took barely more than a minute to pass through the surprised scout's mind, but that was all the nymph needed. It lunged at the shocked human, and they tumbled to the floor in a mass of limbs. Cáel kicked at it, but his boot connected with the chair instead of the beast's leg. It pinned his bracered arm above his head, and its teeth sank into Cáel's shoulder. The pain was worse than anything the man had ever known before. The venom felt like ice, spreading through the artery the veins had caught, but his skin burned fire-hot where it tore beneath the strong jaws. He still managed to curse the creature for not killing him outright. As his vision swam black, he wondered which of the scouts would be the one to find his jet and kill him.